All right. All right. All right, everybody. Thanks so much for listening. The returning legend, who I have his book in the background. Hopefully, people can see it live and in color on the TV. This is Steve Laffey coming on the program right now. SteveLaffey.com is the website. Definitely check it out for a lot of good information, not just on financial, but also on economic issues, on social insecurity. The list goes on and on. He does have the book out as it is behind me, Primary Mistake. Definitely check it out on Amazon or wherever books are sold. And he does have the movie out on Amazon. It is Fixing America. Definitely check it out on Amazon. I believe it's like $3 or $4, something like that. Cheap deal, but a lot of good information. So definitely check out Steve. It's a pleasure to have you on. So many things to talk about in so little time.
Yeah, go. Why don't you go? There's so much going on here. I'll try to blurt it all out.
So let's talk about this Iran-U.S. peace deal to start off the show with. I'll tell you what, it seems like President Trump is just like President Obama reincarnated. It's almost the same Iran deal. He says the strait is going to be opened up. First of all, it's going to take a long time for the oil tankers to get across the ocean. They don't move 200 miles an hour. They move very slow and steady across. Plus, there's a ton of tankers trying to get in and out. That's going to take more time. And we also see the strategic oil reserves are very low due to Biden and also President Trump. So it seems like this country, the gas prices are dipping a little bit now, but they're going to go back up. They could go as high as $10 due to this issue. And we know that this issue, as far as the peace deal, is on pins and needles right now. This is not something that's inked in pen. This is pencil, Steve.
Yeah, well, first of all, just go to the market of oil for a second before we get to President Trump disaster. The big oil people just misunderstood, or they just wanted to scream into microphones about oil going to stay at $150 a barrel. There's plenty of oil. There was demand destruction everywhere, especially in communist China, where they just told people not to drive cars or whatever they did. They just took out themselves 3 to 5 million barrels a day and just said to hell with it, right? There are other ways to get stuff out through pipelines, which they increased the capacity of. So that's one thing. So oil is not going to $200 a barrel. It's not going to $10 a gallon. There's lots of oil. There's lots of alternatives. There's lots of natural gas. We, as in America, have to go back to what Trump did to attack Iran. I am 100% for regime change, and we're not going to get it. I am not for a clown show that's been going on off and on since 2016. I'm not for it. I'm not for what he's been doing in foreign policy. So he didn't get prepared. He never gets prepared. He's not even prepared to eat a sandwich. You know what I'm saying? He's not prepared for meetings. He doesn't do a press briefing. And when you rely on people like Pete Hegseth, who's the next to get out, by the way, and they're going to throw Vance. I told you this half a year ago. They're going to throw Vance under the bus. Rubio's never going to be president. This is all going to happen because Trump didn't get prepared. How would be getting prepared? If you were 12 years old, you would know how to get out of Afghanistan like Biden did not. If you were 12, you would know that you would fill up the strategic reserve over the year before you attacked Iran, right? You would know you would settle the Hezbollah stuff, right? No matter what the settlement was, it would be killing all the Hezbollah people, in my opinion. But that would be it. 2, you would never go. 3, we go on all day about this stuff, but you would never go in without knowing how difficult it was, and you would tell the allies before, so you get their help, right? You would have done more with refining starting in 2016 in his first term about making sure whatever we produce can be refined in our country. People have no idea how much oil gets done in different parts of the world and gets sent to other different parts of the world to get refined, because refineries can only do what they can do within a limit, but some refineries can do, jet fuel. Some can turn it into propane. This is ridiculous. So let's go to the 14th. So what happens is, of course, Trump gets tired of everything. He just gets tired. So he started by saying he wanted regime change. He was going to do this, he's going to do that. And we don't have regime change. And what do we have? We have something worse than Obama. In fact, This is like a Jimmy Carter thing, right? This is like, and everybody knows it. And now this is what really undoes Trump with conservatives who have been holding on. Like the sycophants have been holding on. Like, this is not okay. It's not okay. We're going to give them somehow $300 billion. They only have frozen $127 billion within 10, 12 billion of what it is, right? Trump is now saying they're going to give them back that money because it's theirs, or the thing, none of this makes sense. So he's at, by the way, who would think, remember when he met Putin in Alaska, and I said on this show and other shows that the Russians think Alaska belongs to them. They think it got stolen from. They say it on TV every day, so he goes to Alaska. The man has no knowledge of history. So he goes to Versailles so he could do the World War I treaty again? I mean, so by the way, the Iranians are going to put tolls on for oil coming out. Not for a while. Don't get me wrong. They need money. They're gonna keep their ballistic missiles. And believe me, when you don't do regime change, they want, in order to bring chaos to the world, their mullah, Ayatollah military, not the secular one, they believe that when that happens, they go to heaven. Vance is talking. Let me just have one last thing.
Just interject quickly.
Yeah.
Hypothetically, they could just do that toll issue as far as the strait until the end of time.
Yes. Why won't they? Of course they can.
Again, this is worse than
It's worse.
Obama, as you stated, because Obama didn't have that.
Right.
The strait was always open.
Right.
Now Trump comes in and he says that he created all this peace. He's just screwing the American people and the Europeans left and right.
And never forget this, even though he's making billions as president, billions. Not Jimmy Carter stuff, not my favorite president, but at least a guy who took a vow of humbleness and, did things for himself the right way. Went out to check out elections, whether they were right or wrong. That's what he did, stuff like that, right? So God bless the guys, but Trump is the opposite, right? Like this guy is now older in many ways than Biden. He really is. He's forcing people like Rubio to go on TV and say he didn't fall asleep. Well, there's a videotape of the man sleeping next to you, and then, but because Rubio says things like he calls me hours of the night. By the way, he does. What the hell's the matter with the guy? If I was the then he's got Vance, by the way, to throw under the bus now. He actually says, straight out, the man's totally on a terror ramp, right? Straight out. Listen, people say I could just blame Vance for this. I guess I will. Be Vance's fault if it doesn't work out, right? He's not joking. So Vance will never be president either. These people are all done. All done. And so this is a worse deal. It's not even a deal. By the way, it's not a deal because the mullahs will always keep doing what they're doing. Every president has tried this stupidity. There's only one thing they understand: death. And so if you weren't prepared to kill them all, by the way, I want to go back to this one thing that never comes up. This is the most important thing. It's his foreign policy. Whether he goes to communist China, remember the trade deal a month ago? Oh, that's right. There's no trade deal, right? No one bought anything, right? But he has to keep things moving around like a shell game, so you don't say, Mr. President, they didn't buy any more potatoes or corn. They're not doing anything over there but trying to, take over the world in communist China. Then he goes into Venezuela, and instead of having elections like every other president would, he's like, no, we'll just keep that lady and we'll get the oil. But it's again, oil. By the way, Venezuelan oil makes a lot of sense at $120 a barrel. It's just very heavy, bad oil, right? So now it's going to go down, probably, oil, until the next thing happens, whenever that might be. But now in Iran, he's got Vance saying that we're talking to it depends on Iran becoming a normal country again. When the hell are they talking about? Name the one person? But it goes back to human rights. There's no human rights in communist China. No one does anything about it, although Christianity's grown like a weed. They're suppressing everybody they can in Venezuela. They don't care, right? And in Iran, he said, get ready to rise up. There'll be an opportunity. When they take in that $60 billion extra in tolling people and the $300, they're going to use the money to kill their own people. Do
And how about
people?
all the money, Steve, that they're going to get back to rebuild the country again?
Yes.
That we just blew up
Right.
along with Israel.
Right.
So again, this is a big charade.
Yeah. Under Hitler, when he was dead, and we went after, and we kept a couple of them, unfortunately, but we let the Israelis go after all the Nazis, catch them wherever they can, kill them wherever they were. Great. There was a different regime. So when we started the Marshall Plan, when we started saying we had to have, for our own benefit, a redone Europe. And that's what worked for America, because unlike today, when he didn't tell anybody about going into Iran, right? Even though someone might say, well, they haven't carried the weight, but I totally get it. But in the end, Europe did what we wanted. No more. No more. And when you see what's happening in Germany of military rebuilding, there's a reason we didn't want Japan and Germany to rebuild.
Yeah.
It's called hundreds of millions of dead people throughout the history of the world.
And no one knows who the leader of the world is anymore. It's supposed to be the president of the United
not.
States. But we have somebody that's inept, that's worried about specifically just enriching himself.
Yeah.
He makes Biden and Hunter Biden look like child's play.
Yeah.
He makes Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton. That's like child's play. He's making billions, not millions of dollars.
No, they have a whole new way.
every day.
Yeah, they have a whole new way. And it's disgusting. And here's the real disgusting part. No one seems to give a crap. Like you and I can do this show, right? And you could turn it over to some other topic, whatever it is, Social Security. And I'll say young people don't seem to give a crap about their future, right? Because that's what's going on. We can go to the U.S. Senate right now, and we can see which person actually stood up on the floor today and said, Mr. President, resign. You're a clown. You promised in April 16th of 2015 in the first term you would balance the budget. You didn't do any of this. You, Scott Bessent, said that you'd get the deficit down to 3% of GDP. It's 5.8. You said we were going to create 3 million more barrels a day. We're not of oil. You said all these things. None of it's happening. And that's because the people of America allow it. And they've got to wake up. There has to be a great reawakening, not just in Christianity, which is the most important, but about what's happened to the country. Listen, we're talking about this. What's really the important thing? We don't have the money to fund these things at some point when the dollar really goes out of control. Our kids don't learn in school. Not Laffey kids. I got an 18-year-old in the other room getting a PhD in economics. Not Laffey kids, just the rest of them, it looks like. I'm being hyperbole. There's lots of great kids, don't get me wrong. But generally, they're not learning. People aren't producing children. The hell's going on?
Well, he's got his whole family enriched in crypto deals.
Yes.
The ballroom, he's still saying that it's paid for by donations, which they've came out and said that's 100% false.
Right.
And he put his Mar-a-Lago guy, his pool guy from Mar-a-Lago or New Jersey, Bedminster, whichever one it was from, in charge of the reflection pool that's totally green and it's algae everywhere. I mean, this whole presidency is a total joke.
And I've said this before.
Laughing at this country. I'm ashamed that I voted for the guy and I believed in the bullshit.
Well, at least, let me just tell you something. At least if I keel over on this show and they bury me in Rhode Island and they call Paul Sheridan at the Sheridan Funeral Home, right? At least someone will get up and say, that son of a bitch was right. His movie is right. He didn't speak for Trump back in 2015 twice when he could have got good publicity. He didn't do a rally. He didn't do anything but tell people this is going to be a problem. And it wasn't a conservative thing and it wasn't a liberal thing. He's a crap ass person. I don't hang around with and go work for people, which I could have worked for the Trump administration. I don't do it for people who mistreat women. I don't do it. Yeah. That, by the way, that's a basic thing I grew up with in Edgewood, Cranston, Rhode Island. Nobody ever would to mistreat a woman, a girl. I never saw it happen. I never heard of it happening. And if it ever had happened, someone would have slapped someone upside the head just for saying something stupid. Now, don't get me wrong. People joked around. We had fun. Boys and girls hung out together. and big clans of people whipping around, not gangs, but I mean good kids down in Edgewood. But nobody did something. No one said, someone asked a question, look, you're stupid. No one said that to a female, ever. And so we grew up never hearing about
the
this.
nicer things he might have said.
Right. Well, you can now. Listen, I'm not even talking about personal relations. I'm not talking about affairs. I'm not talking about boyfriend, girlfriend. I'm not talking about premarital sex. I'm not talking about any of the stuff that goes on in the world. I'm talking about a Wikipedia page where 27 women have come forward and said he molested me or raped me, including his first wife. Right. How was that not enough? I know we're off tangent, but how did we get to this, where a man who only cares about himself, suffers from malignant narcissism, starts a war that I'm all for if he's going to finish it, right? Ends the war where we're in worse shape. And let's go to this one part that he should have to pay out personally. If you have a car accident, 3 car accidents, right? And you're insured by, let's say, Progressive, which probably wouldn't insure you. Let's say they keep insuring you. They raise your rates to such a level, there's a premium for your bad behavior. Let's say they were your fault, like whatever. So it takes years, as you know, if you get a ticket, it takes years for that stuff to go down to a normal level. Even if oil, apples to apples, we won't be able to compare it, apples to apples. Even if oil comes down to $60 a barrel, roughly the price it was before he attacked Iran, it would have been 55. There's going to be a premium put in. The cost of doing business in oil in the Straits and around the world, because Trump will not take care of the problem. That's the real, that's the long-lasting problem. You add into it that, can you imagine what the Saudi Arabians, when he says they should keep their missiles, can you imagine what's going on in Oman? Can you imagine what's going on when we have all these bases around the Middle East? These people are like, what the hell just happened? We were okay, right? We were just getting the oil out, doing our Sunni Shia stupidity, right?
Well, Trump just came out. This came out in a new book that's out that he compared himself to Hitler, Mao, and Stalin and praised them.
That's what fascists do. By the way, stop right there. That's what fascists do. Fascists make heroes out of our enemies like Putin. Now, this leads you to the whole G7 thing that we wanted to talk about for a second. So think about who really won the war. Ukraine. Who won? By the way, I said a year ago on your show that Ukraine won. I said it on national shows. People's jaws would drop 2 years ago. Ukraine's already won the war. Well, of course they already won the war. The war was supposed to be over in 3 weeks, but because Ukraine was in another existential fight for their survival, they came up with drones, medium-range missiles, long-range missiles. Last night, they just hit something in Moscow. The oil refineries are in flames. So they went over to Saudi Arabia and other countries and said, here's our drones. Here's how we can help you. They won the war. And even Trump at the G7 meeting had to acknowledge that Moscow was losing. But what fascist, by the way, this gets us into another topic. The reason that Trump is really acting like a fascist is, and I'm not saying this like he's killing people in the streets. That's not what fascism is. People forget, they think fascism is like, Hitler. It's not. It's not only Hitler, but fascism is a Mussolini thing. And that's when you take stakes in companies. Where do we start? The golden ticket at U.S. Steel, which kept them from closing a steel mine. You got IBM. The list goes on. He's
talking about taking a government stake in SpaceX now. And other AI.
It's ridiculous.
Now.
It's ridiculous. It's by the way, every Republican should stand up, because what people have to understand, when Democrats control the presidency, the House, and the Senate, they will use everything Trump just did, which wasn't conservative and not Republican historically. Right. They will take not just stakes, complete ownership of healthcare, and say, Trump did this. We just took over United Healthcare. To hell with them. Everybody's got the same health insurance. To hell with you. And then, by the way, you'll have something like in Great Britain, where if you don't have money, you're just in a line. You're in a line. If you're in Canada right now and where do you go? You go to America. These are the long-term implications. And the real thing to remember is that because of America becoming so short-term, people, by the way, Not people waking up at 12, at 18 saying, well, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to get married, have a child, I'm going to buy a home, I'm going to live here, I'm going to do. No. What people do now, I don't even know what my phone is. Anyway, people just grab their phone and go like this. What's happening today? I want to see my news. Oh, you don't agree with me? Screw you. That's what's going on. That's what's going on in the Trump is only a reflection of today's narcissism of our country. Why, by the way, in all seriousness, why would someone have tattoos all over their face? Would there be a reason?
But I don't know why they have the tattoos on their face, their neck, their arms,
anyway,
their legs.
Good-looking girls all over Fort Collins, tattoos all over their face, necks. I mean, it's because, by the way, they know they're going to look terrible at 47. They look terrible now. Here's the other thing about tattoos. Does it really blend in with your skin? Do any of the tattoos, all right, so behind me right here is a painting of my wife. Very beautiful lady. Painting of my wife. I couldn't put that on my arm. It wouldn't look like that. It would look muted. By the way, and I don't mean to say this, but if your skin is darker, it looks worse. So, but that's just one of the many things that go on in our country about the short-termers. By the way, these are people on welfare covered with tattoos. I mean, I can get by. I basically eat 3 bowls of oatmeal in the morning. It's like 47 cents. I make my own coffee in a pot. So a cup's like 20 cents, not the Starbucks crap. Don't get me wrong. I might get a cup of coffee at the store if I'm with somebody, iced coffee, whatever. No big deal. But on a daily basis, after a couple of bananas, right? How much money do I spend on food? And I got plenty of money. So what the hell's going on? Anyway, we're off topic. Go ahead. But Trump is a reflection of America. We have ourselves to blame for this stupidity.
Just to interject quickly, because we talked about, and you just tapped on it a little bit, but we didn't go too in depth about it. But I want to get your opinion of having the UFC at the White House, like it's WWE wrestling, and the guys are coming out of the White House and they're going like this. And
yeah, no, it's. By the way, it's such a vote. Number one, this is how Trump. You can tell he really doesn't care at all. It is a total vote loser for people in the middle who don't really independent people who are mostly in their 50s and 60s and 70s, who don't know how they're going to vote. It's a revulsion that you would see. Dolly Madison saved the White House in 1810, whatever, right? They tried to burn it. Like it's I'm religious. It's not sacrosanct, but it's really important that we treat it well, right? You don't do cage fighting. I mean, if they wanted to dress up for the July 4th in different outfits and do a reenactment of the Civil War thing on the steps with 20 people, fine, do a video, it's great. But this is like I'm actually sickened by it. Now, it gets worse. There's a guy who comes out and yells to the crowd, Michelle Obama is a man, right? So you don't have like cerebral people like Bill Russell, who he may have passed away, but you don't have people from yesterday who would have some brains and say something smart. He yells that Michelle Obama is a man. This is a friend of Donald Trump. By the way, Trump starts smiling. First of all, if that had happened to me in front of me and I was president, I'd be like, get that guy the hell out of here. What are you talking? I would then call Michelle Obama. Not a fan of Michelle Obama, folks. Not a fan. A fan of civil behavior in front of the White House. Or anywhere. Who would dare? By the way, was she there? Where did that come up? Did anybody ever accuse? She's a woman. But remember, our president made a living of staying in the news saying Barack Obama for years and years and years was not born in America. Even back then, I'd be like, what's he talking about? Of course he was born in America. What are they talking about? Anyway, but he lives in that world, and so he invited that world to the White House.
Right. Well, right now the country is a reality TV show. It is The Apprentice.
It is.
It is Miss USA. Look at all the women in the White House.
Yeah.
They're all good-looking blonde women. Look at all what's going on outside the White House. UFC.
Yeah.
Trump's making money. And you brought this up, but now they can even extend on this. The Democrats could run a commercial.
Yeah.
Puts the clips of the USC and Trump sitting there laughing.
Right.
Put the reflection pool.
Yeah.
Put the ballroom and the disaster that.
Just straight down. Yeah.
Put Trump saying that inflation isn't real.
Right.
He likes high inflation. That's his new one.
That's his new one.
Inflation.
Yeah, loves it.
And that's an easy win. Anybody that still votes for Trump, again, you could be a conservative, you could be a liberal, you could be a moderate. If you vote for anybody that says they're with Trump after all this nonsense, then you just deserve what you get.
Yeah. And listen, and people know, listen,
peasant.
so people who may have heard this show for the first time, I'm a conservative guy. I'm pro-life. I'm strong national defense, right? I'm for producing more oil. I'm for drilling, in a lot of places. Because wherever you seem to drill, you find a lot of oil. So I'm not like some liberal guy. Like, I'm a Ronald Reagan, actually a Calvin Coolidge, Ronald Reagan conservative. And this has always been disgusting. Now, the fact that even today, people who are not running for office anymore, right? Or even are not standing up and saying he ought to resign, because he clearly doesn't care anymore at all. This Iran thing sums it up. He couldn't care less.
The only guys that have stood up in the Republican Party to somewhat of an extent, they haven't stood up fully, they've stood up like halfway, is Bill Cassidy. He lost in the primary.
Right.
The guy in Texas, Cornyn, he lost.
Well, Cornyn was with the president. Don't get me wrong. He still lost. So the Republicans voted for a guy who's been impeached by the state representatives of Texas. He has all kinds of ethical problems that go back, but nobody cares. This is what I'm saying. This is just a reflection of, now, we'll get this thing back, but it's going to have to be a giant, change before.
But Steve, I see a lot of older people in their 60s, their 70s, in their 80s. Not all of them. Again, this is just a generalization. But I go up to them down here in Florida, and they say, I say, you still stand with Trump? I stand with Trump. He's trying to do good for the country.
He's not.
All these old people, and it's
not.
like they're freaking brainwashed.
Yeah.
Where are they mentally?
Their Social Security checks are going to get cut 30% in 6 years.
Well, they don't give a shit though, because they'll probably be dead.
Yeah, but that's someone who's 60 should care. So, something. And listen, at SteveLaffey.com, I have plans for that. That one I borrowed from Larry Kotlikoff, the eminent professor at BU, who's a genius on this topic, and other ones. But if you cared about the country, it would have been better. I'm going to say this again: if Trump had lost, and the Republicans controlled the Senate and the House by wide margins, because then nothing would get done, and then you'd watch Kamala Harris make a complete fool of herself, and then we get some normal president in. But Trump it's going to be 12 years of his complete nonsense.
Yeah.
Election denial. Every day there's something new. The violation of law of taking and putting your own name on the Kennedy Center should have been enough for anybody. I said it over and over again when he did it. All I did was it's not even AI. Type in federal law 1964 why it was created. It's like, I forget the section, but say it's section 22. It specifically says it can only be named after John F. Kennedy. Forget the fact that nobody who's ever been elected to anything. Can you imagine Lincoln? He was shot, I know. Not a good example. Can you imagine Eisenhower? Hey, before I go, I want that highway named after me, the Eisenhower, interstate transit. He never did that. Nobody ever did this. Washington, to his credit, just wanted to get the hell out. He didn't want to do 1 term or 2 terms. Those are the people we need. We don't have any of them. Even Lindsey Graham today doesn't say. Lindsey Graham, when you say half stood up, it's better for the future of listen to me, if you're young in politics, it's better for me to never win another election, to not be president, but at least I have 6 children, to say to my 6 children, this is what I did. I lost. I didn't even do very well, but this is what I did to try to help the country. Then to be part of the sycophant crowd. Do you know what the Secretary of Commerce, he comes from a brokerage firm? Do you imagine that they have some kind of wins going on in the brokerage community and IPOs and so forth because of his association? His kids run it. He's the guy, by the way, the Epstein guy. The guy who didn't know Epstein, went next door. Then he went to the island, but he forgot. How would you forget to go to the island? These are the people Trump hires. He's still in. They've
And
got.
he had Steve. He had about 4 or 5 housekeepers with him.
Yeah.
And he was bringing his kids.
Yeah, no, the whole thing is preposterous on any level. There's nothing. I mean, Jimmy Carter had a brother.
That was Ludnick.
Jimmy Carter, we had a brother who was involved with something called Billy Beer and tried to make money off the name, producing something called Billy Beer. Beer. Sorry I'm from Rhode Island. But that was like the extent of Jimmy Carter, right? Hunter Biden sold paintings, not even real paintings, like supposedly for $500,000. This is like, that pales in comparison to what's going on today. But when will people wake up? When will people at churches wake up and say, enough's enough? He's obviously not a Christian. A Christian would know something about the Bible.
And you see all these people from that TPUSA with all the young people. They're all the young people are against Trump for the most part now, unless they're getting paid off.
Yeah.
But these people at the TPUSA, they're all got the pastors running around over there saying Trump's doing God's work, Trump is Jesus. I know those guys are getting paid off, but it's really ridiculous.
Yeah, it's sad.
That
It's
these people are supposed to be men of the cloth.
Yeah,
and
but they're not.
saying that
They're not.
Trump is
They've
Jesus.
sold this. People, never forget how many people, go back to Jesus, just open the Bible. How many people sold their soul, including Judas? Right?
Yeah.
Just for a pound of silver or whatever the hell, 37. People do it for the smallest amount. And the strangest thing, and I'll leave your listeners with this, the strangest thing is, especially, I don't mean to say this because people are principle, but there's many people in the Senate and many people in the House who have their own money. They have what you would call your FU money. Like they don't have to be there. If they don't get elected, whatever, right? And they still don't act like they have any principles. Look at Tim Cook, the Apple. Do you think he agrees at all with Donald Trump? Does anybody think the guy at Apple, what did he do? Gave him $1 million for the ballroom and the election. By the way, the inauguration, people put in millions.
In the front. They're all in the front.
The list of
the guy from Google.
But you know what the truth is?
Zuckerberg.
Yeah, it'll never be enough. It'll never be enough for these people because they sold their souls, and it's one of the worst things to watch. People selling their souls for so little.
Yeah.
I mean,
I want to end on this quickly, Steve. We talk about the economy and the inflation is at a 3-year high. We still see prices in the grocery stores. Obviously, gas is still pretty high. Again, it's going down, but it's still not down to when Trump took office.
Yeah.
Insurance is high. People in my age bracket are younger. They can't buy a house, never mind even renting an apartment. They can't afford that. The pay, as far as people getting paid, it's not up to where inflation is. So what is your opinion on inflation as far as it being at a 3-year high? And it seems like the president, the Republican Party doesn't care. I don't know what the Democrat solution is. I haven't heard much from them either.
No.
And no one gives a shit. And it seems like the people in this country, they're more stuck on politics is like wrestling.
Right.
This guy versus that guy. I'm on team red. You're on team blue. And we vote for the party, not the person. You're supposed to vote for the person, not the party.
Well, what are
about a party?
But where are the people? So to back up track, the Federal Reserve used to say they were going to keep inflation at 0, which they never really did. But then they started to say they were going to keep it at 2%, and they called that price stability, where you lose half of the value of your net worth over 35 years. That's 2% inflation. But it's been running much more than that. In fact, yesterday or the last week, it came out at 4%. I'm talking about trailing 12 months. Now, what I look at is the future and, hopefully look at the first derivative and second derivative and what we call the rate of change and the rate of change on that, which is what investors really care about. What's the future hold? So, yes, to be blunt, middle classes have gotten totally hosed. Their wages probably went up 15% in the last 5 years and inflation went up 25%. Total prices, right? So they're way behind. And in fact, I heard someone say this today, that even if they kept inflation for the next 10 years at 0, they wouldn't be back to 2% over the last 20 years. Because people forget the compounding effect of things, right? So oil prices probably next month, you see what they come down, the PPI, then the CPI, the producer price index, and the CPI will be down, and that'll mean we're running at a 3-something%. But that's not really the point. Here's the real point. The real point is that, as Scott Bessent erroneously said again, that they would run the economy with 3% real growth over and above inflation. First year under his administration, it was 2.1. Now it's running at 1.6. It's decelerating. And there's no sense that other than AI and data centers, which is 4% of the economy, that's 95% of the economic growth. If you took those numbers out, I'm not saying you should because they're part of the numbers, the economy has grown at 0.1% since Trump became president for the second time. 0.1, not 1. So nothing's happened. By the way, with his tariffs, name the aluminum plant being built. No. Name the manufacturing renaissance. No. Why? They're not enacted in law. 2, the permitting process is too high. 3, we can go on all day about why it's not happening because we haven't set up, Trump didn't plan for it. So to the inflation side, here's the real thing. And this is why we have the new Fed chairman, Kevin Warsh, who acted more like a hawk than a dove, even though he promised Trump he would lower rates to get the job. He's not lowering rates right now anyway. He may raise rates, short-term rates, because he actually knows some things that other people really, I guess, didn't know or care about. If the Fed were to raise rates, the 10-year yield would start going down because people would finally say to themselves, America's getting their act together. I could buy some of those. Inflation's going to really go down. What Kevin Warsh really needs to do, and he won't do it, he needs to do what Paul Volcker did. He needs to throw the economy into a massive recession, like 79, like 83. There were 2 of them, by the way, under Paul Volcker. And not follow the silly, we're going to follow whatever the 2-year bond. I'm going to bore your clients with this, but basically for 20 years, all they do is like follow with the 2-year treasury years, and they raise or lower rates, and they're always behind. Volcker didn't do that. He just raised rates to like 20% in the short term. He crushed inflation. And he wrung the system out. And by the grace of God, Reagan came in, not because Jimmy Carter appointed Paul Volcker, right? After Arthur Burns destroyed the country. So financially. But here's the thing. Unless Kevin Warsh is willing to go to Congress and look him in the eye and say, I just want to let you guys know, spending, your problem. Inflation, my problem. I'm not bailing you guys out. We're not doing this anymore. If he were to say that, the stock market would go down a lot because then he'd be telling people something we all know. 2, if we weren't going to do the easy money during a recession, we're just going to wring the system out of all the excess that's going on since whatever, let's say at least since 2008, right? We would all be in much better shape. Rates would be lower. And if that forced the United States Congress to do something about our deficit, which, by the way, is fairly easy to do, not to get it to balance. It's fairly easy to change our tax code. It's fairly easy to do these things. 51% of the people in this country don't pay any federal income taxes. So a fair tax, a flat tax, these would be things like Kemp Roth was, only squared, back from 81, 83, whenever Kemp Roth went in, the new tax code. Because we did have really progressive 70% marginal rates. Right. So if these things don't happen, we just keep going and going. And here's the worst part. We may die a slow death. There may not be a moment where we all say, well, you know what, like in Cranston, Rhode Island, let Laffey fix it. It's bankrupt. We're going to elect this guy. He told us it's going to suck. We're still going to do it because we're totally bankrupt. We may not have that moment. And if we don't, young people are never buying a house.
Yeah. And BlackRock is buying up all the properties along with...
Sure, rich people will buy more. All these large corporations will get larger and more powerful and control even more. If that's what you want, folks, that's what you got.
There's no regulation, nothing.
No, there's nothing. There's nobody saying split these people up. I mean, Teddy Roosevelt, listen, again.
Well, they own the whole country. Vanguard, BlackRock, and State Street own the whole country. They own like 80%.
And now, by the way, I'm not saying BlackRock's doing anything illegal. All I'm saying is that we have what we call a Gini coefficient of unequal wealth. Yes, we do. But they're not breaking any laws. They're just taking advantage of what's happened, right? And they're putting the screws, because they got the money, to everybody else.
Yeah, well, they're doing this with the housing market. They
They
did
are.
it with newspapers. We talked about that
Yes.
off here.
Yeah.
As far as the newspapers,
Yeah.
they just suck. They just drain them until they shut them down. So, I mean, it's a totally different.
But the people
obviously
of America
mechanism
better
for that.
damn well wake up, because if you didn't wake up with what happened with Trump and Iran, where we're actually worse off, we're just worse off in a sense.
Right.
There's no regime change. The people who are left, by the way, I want you to think about this one thing, folks. They're going to get a nuclear weapon and they're going to use it. They don't have to get one by enriching uranium. They can have one shipped in from North Korea.
That's right. It's true.
What we
true.
needed,
and if
what
it
we
happens, it's on Trump's.
Yeah, remember the second part. If we got prepared and the Kurds or name an ethnic group had the guns and we bombed the living crap out of these people and their own people rose up because they had guns, the world would change. But until we're willing to do that, which is a draconian... Listen, these things I've been saying forever are sort of draconian things that people don't do. But they work. If people in Hong Kong had guns, if the United Kingdom had armed everybody with training courses and everybody in Hong Kong was walking around with guns everywhere, do you think China would control the country?
Right, but people are financially illiterate. They are historically illiterate. The school system is a joke. We went through that before. Well, we won't go down that road right now. But people don't care. They're worried about watching the Kardashians or some nonsense on YouTube or TikTok.
So I was on.
That's their life. They don't care what you're saying. It's bullshit today.
Yeah, I had to tell someone yesterday. Again, I live in another world. I don't know what's on TV. I haven't watched a new TV show, like one that there's a new show on. We should try to watch the first episode. I watched the last one I ever did that with, and I was listening to the advertisements. It's the only one I've watched. I don't know when the show 24 came out. That's the last one. Kiefer Sutherland. I watched every episode, I must say. I never missed an episode. But right now, tonight, I will watch a rerun of Hill Street Blues because I finished Hawaii Five-0. That's as far as I go. The rest of the stuff is...
The deal is because all the shows now stink.
They stink. You couldn't watch them. I can't watch them. By the way, think about it. Between movies I used to go to, I can't find a movie to go to. Can't go to a movie. Unless they play, some old movie at the theater once every other month, I'll go, right? But my daughter, Sarah, would want to go and so forth. But I don't go. When I first married Kelly 32 years ago, every other weekend, in fact, when I met her, the first date we went on was go to The Mask.
Mm.
That was a pretty funny movie, the guy with the green face.
Film, yeah.
So I'm not. There's nothing to do except watch Hill Street Blues. I hate to laugh. It's a really funny show. But the world as we live in. Here's the last. I'll give you a thought. The question for everybody out there is ask themselves this: what actually is better? Better to the world is this computer being a little bit lighter and faster and having more memory. Stuff I could never use. Right? Better to me, to the world, is that children learn the history of America, can all write, at least finish at the worst, Algebra 2, totally competent before they decide they don't want to go to college. They're totally competent. They know exactly how to calculate. A man starts walking 3 miles that way. Another person's going 3 miles, 10 miles an hour that way. They start they know when they're going to meet, right? If you can do that competently with all the numbers, you can still get along. That's better. But nobody thinks that's better. They think writing something that AI wrote for you and turning it in is better.
Well, the people that run the country don't want the education system to be...
No, they wouldn't be in office.
Because they want full control over the people.
Yeah.
If the education system is great, then they will have zero control over the people, and they'll be making less money. They'll have less control. So
yeah. Anyway,
that's the way that goes.
You better go.
Yeah. All right, we will end that there. SteveLaffey.com.
All right, God bless.
Fixing America's the movie, and then Primary Mistake. Definitely check out the book. Steve, thanks so much.